Hello everyone, I'm Wayne. This is my first English video published in the YouTube channel. I'm from China, so forgive me if I'm not so fluent in English since I'm not a native English speaker. Today I'm going to talk about the income inequality problem from the perspective of experts in the economic field. This paper mainly focuses on three countries: the United States, France, and China. The authors are from the top schools worldwide: the Paris School of Economics and the University of California, Berkeley. So their view are much more neutral. They're not journalists or something like that. Before introducing the view of these authors, I will briefly talk about what the popular intellectuals think in China. In their view, the United States and France, one represents freedom, one represents romantic. So the income inequality problem should be much more severe in China. But is that true? No one can deny that the average wealth and income households in the US and France is still much larger than that of China. But when it comes to income inequality, actually, it is not the case. Let's jump to the first graph. The first graph shows the top 1% income share, which measures the top 1% income people in the US, China, and France, the percentage of income they held among the total population. As shown in the graph, in 1978, the income inequality problem is much better than today. The top 1% income share in the US is 10%, and China is only 6%. But in the 2014, it grows tremendously. In the US, the top 1% income share is 20%, and France is still 10%, and China it grows to 12%. Actually, from the first graph we can see that France has the most equality. As we can see, the US, the country of freedom, the income inequality problem there is much more worse than both China and France. And back to 1978, the income inequality problem in China is much better than US and France, but today it grows larger, and the best country is France. But still, both France and China is much better than US. Now we come to the second graph, which shows the bottom 50% income share. In China, back to 1978, the bottom 50% income share is 28%, which means that at that time the income inequality problem in China is much better. And as for US, they only hold 20%, even back to 1978. And today, the bottom 5% income share is only around 12%. But today, the income inequality problem in China is also getting worse. Now, the bottom 50% income share in China is only 15%. It is roughly the same as US. So the bottom people in China and US are all getting worse now. And France, which is the best country, and the bottom 50% income share is always 22%. The authors then show another important table, the real income growth rate in the three countries. What is real income? Real income is how much money an individual entity makes after accounting for the inflation rate. It is sometimes called real wage when referring to an individual's income. Generally, the real income growth rate of people in China is more than 800%, and for US and France, it is 59% and 39%. This is consistent with the fast growth of China in the last 40 years since the reform. But the income growth rate among different people can really show the equality problem. For the bottom 50% people in China, the growth rate is still large, 400%, but it is only half of the average growth rate, showing the imbalance of income growth in China. For the bottom 50% people in the US, it is much worse. The growth rate is -1%, which means that their income is diminishing. As for France, it is also 39%. It is the same as the average growth rate in France, showing that it is the most equal country. Lastly, I'm going to show the income growth rate of the top 1% people. It is roughly 19 times in China, and 2 times in the US, and only 67% in France. So generally, the income inequality problem is getting worse worldwide, both in the China, US, and France. But it is much severe in the US, and it is better in China, and the best is France. I'm Wayne. This is the end of this week's introduction of economic paper. See you next time.